Right, we're live. I'll come round with the thing in a minute, but I was going to ask the guys, and I think I touched on it a little bit. What are the biggest blockers you see to what you're trying to achieve with Trimble in general and BIM adoption in the UK, particularly, especially on a project the size of Hinckley? What are the biggest roadblocks?
So you guys mentioned those three elements of people, process, and technology.
Yeah.
There are big elements in each one of those that I would say are blocks. So let's start about the two that aren't my fault as a technology provider.
Absolutely.
Let's start with people. So the first thing I would say is that your BIM evangelist is not necessarily the right person to make change within your firm. What I've discovered is guys like me who are vastly enthusiastic about this whole change, people just think you're somebody who's vastly enthusiastic about something and don't listen too much. So what I've found is that the guy who was initially a skeptic but becomes, if you like, a reluctant convert is your best way to make change in the people side. In process side, so if you follow the ISO, if you follow 19650, you're going to get your process pretty good, I would say.
Yeah.
But it is remarkable how many businesses I would suspect all of us go into, and you talk about what is your process, and actually they don't know. So the good thing for me is then I say, well, do you do Lean or Six Sigma or some of these studies that look at process? Any of the companies that understand that, their transition to BIM, because they understand their processes, is much better. So now I'll talk about the one which is our fault, which is technology. And I would say the biggest blocker there is what it's always been, which is the adoption of open non-proprietary formats, no matter what they may be. So I sat on the UK government's GIG, the Government Industry Interoperability Group, and we produced what frankly is a draft, not a final document, about interoperability from the client, from the AIM asset owner's point of view, and how they begin to track information coming in, and how this idea of a single source of truth just isn't right. So in my CDE world, there are multiple CDEs and you are transferring information between them. So again, I would look to stuff like the Building Smart International's Open CDE initiative, which is beginning to look at these things and stuff like that. So sorry, that's a long-winded way of, because I think there are blockages throughout.
Right, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, okay, thank you. So perhaps I'll... Oh, sorry. So obviously you presented on a specific successful BIM project, but again, on the negative side of that, where were the biggest problems that you encountered as you moved through that successful project? What were your blockers?
Yeah, okay, it's a good question. Basically, it's like this. We are a 6th generation construction company. Yeah. We are successful since 1878. And you have a lot of, we have 13 departments, and each department head is working in this company for 27 or 28 years. So they are very, accustomed to their old conventional method. And change is not so easy. It's not done in a day or two. It's a long process. You need to develop it strategically. You need to make up. You might lose some people in the process. They might say, "No, I don't want to do BIM. I just want to go to some other company and just chill out because in 2 years I'm anyways going to get retired." So stuff like this. There are a lot of problems there. So it's not just technological, but also in the people. You need to have acceptance. You need to get from your bosses a go signal, an investment, and
Yes, it's interesting, isn't it?
That's one issue. And there's also, like he mentioned, there's open BIM or closed BIM scenario. In this project, it was very specific to say that we had open tenders. That means each architecture or structural engineer had to win a bid in the open competition. Right. So each one comes with a different software solution. So it was a new task for me because I myself am an architect. I'm used to 2 or 3 software solutions. Yeah. And you have to work with different companies and 30 different companies, so it has to be open BIM. So we had to test each and every interface if it was working. Yeah. So that was a technological challenge which I had, and the people perspective to acceptance of BIM.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm going to slightly different question for Jonathan, and because I know him, I do know probably where we're going with this. So, Jonathan, I know you've been responsible for implementing BIM on an organisational wide, and we won't mention names here of the companies.
No.
But what on that organisational change piece, where did you find the biggest blockers? Without mentioning names.
No, it's really quite an interesting one, because actually I think both of you have alluded to it in a certain way, that those who seem to be closer to retirement were almost considered blockers, but actually in my experience it wasn't. I would never be ageist about who was going to be the blocker in that organisation. I think it was dependent on role, and it was the value taken from the change. And I think when people were transitioning from what they saw as a perfectly acceptable deliverable, when they were doing kind of 2D drawings, they've done it their whole career. They enjoyed doing it, actually, and that was something difficult in that respect, was taking something that someone really enjoyed doing a 2D drawing and saying, actually, you've got to change from this, was quite a big problem, I found. Yeah. And actually, it goes back to what I said in my presentation about value. I was understanding the value both on the floor, but actually at organisational level. So these people needed to change their approach to project work, and it's displaying and understanding actually how do you portray that need for change to those individuals. I suppose that and so that was probably the main blocker I found.
Yes.
I'm just going to say, I'm allowed to say this because I am an old guy. Yeah.
Me too. So don't worry.
So, look, I think one of the reasons that change is finally happening, and it's finally happening fast, is actually that those now in positions of power within the company have grown up with a more digital view on the world and are more familiar with this. And so, as change is needed, they understand more what this is going to be. So, while I'm very glad you said old folk aren't, we are a slight block on this, because, I was trained with only somebody of my age would know what I was doing if I did that, and it's not what you might think it is. It's shaking a rotoring pen, So, the skills that we grew up with were utterly different, and how you and your mindset working in 2D is so utterly different that I think actually, the way that my children, who are all grown up now, the way that they think vastly helps this translation and this change.
Absolutely. I mean, I started on the drawing board, and the first time I saw AutoCAD, I thought I'm going to have to change industry, because there's no way in the world I could ever understand something so complicated. It is a big change for us, getting the pen started on a Monday morning, that's just real. So, any questions out there for us? Do you want to take that?
Thank you very much for all the presentations. They were great, and I received lots of information. I have two questions. One for Mr. Manjunath. I don't know if this is okay to ask, but I am very curious about this fact. And you delivered a very nice project, and you won the tender as well. And I'm curious about what was your main strategy to win this tender? How did you approach the problem, and what made you highlight it as a winner on this process?
Yeah, thank you. So like I told before, we made our employer information requirements with the help of Open BIM standards, and also used DGNB standards. So VDI and DIN norms. So we built our contracts and standards based on the evidences which were successful and norms. And so it was clear from the beginning, and we had this organizational structure, and we made workshops, and we also give them training. It's not like, okay, hey, you're an architect, I give you, and you need to deliver this, and if you don't deliver this, I'm going to fine you. That was not a strategy, but we were like, we're going to take you with, so that you do the next project and the project after that with us together. And it's a win-win situation for us. And this strategy gave a push for us. So we won the tender, and we were in prize. We showed our BIM expertise, and we also accepted open BIM. You know, sometimes it's easier to say, I'm fine with 2 or 3 software solutions because everything works fine. But such projects, you need to be open-minded and open, and it's throughout Europe. It's not just Germany, because we have some companies from Serbia, some from Egypt, some from India who are working there. So it's almost international project. So.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And as my second question, I forgot to introduce myself. I am Emro. I'm coming from Romania, working at Arcadis as a computational design specialist.
Arcadis?
Yes.
You're doing the facility management for us, by the way.
That's great.
Just that you know.
Yeah. And my second question for Mr. Benedict, and as well for you. You both mentioned that during the process, you should pick the best software for the best specific task. My question is that I believe for this type of processes, the main challenge is that to bring the correct people with correct skill set for that software. And in my case, it was always a process to learn the new stuff. But how did you overcome with this skill set of the people when you want to switch these programs?
Okay. Yeah, the most important thing is here, you cannot put people under pressure. So you need to be neutral, and you need to show the advantage what the next software can do it. For example, you need to give them an idea that they came on this idea on their own, so that you feed them with a lot of information, so they think, okay, maybe it's working in the other software, and that's the only approach. If you put them under pressure, either you're going to lose them or you're going to make them ill, and they will never, they're going to have this blockage in their mind, and they won't accept that. You just need to say that these software works together, and that's the future, and that's what the market is trending towards. So that.
So I feel in a way, the reason I gave the hospital pass was I feel in a way because I'm not on the coalface delivering the project, it's probably a little bit unfair for me to answer that one. But I'm going to anyway. At Hinckley, it's a slightly odd situation because, frankly, there are so many, really highly qualified people working there, so more than you would normally find. But nonetheless, it's still a building project with all of that incurs, and they constantly have people in subcontractors and contractors coming in to work, and they have a process of teaching. They actually, so we start off providing a software provider's teaching to them, but then we don't get involved. They then do this themselves. Now, what they've told me is that there is often some reluctance at first, but the great thing is that when you see what the advantage is, then actually, it's great for a software provider, because then they go back to wherever it is and say, well, we've been up at Hinckley and they've just been doing this. It's miles better than what we're doing. So it is really good. But you have to invest in training people. You have to. Yeah. One way or another.
I 100% agree. Perhaps when I was younger and a bit more volatile, I tried this shouting at people until they did what you wanted with the software approach. It doesn't work. It's never worked once ever. They just shut down, and they either leave or have a breakdown. So you have to encourage them and give them the skills and the support they need to be successful. Try the shouting approach, but it won't work. Any more questions from the audience? All good? Yep. Any more thoughts, guys, while we're wrapping up? Final thoughts? Oh, there we go.
So just one on the sort of training side of things. If you are moving your business towards modern process, unless you're a small business where it's relatively easy to do this, if you're a large business, don't do everything at once. Do it step by step, project by project, and again, particularly large organizations, there are people who've been there for a long while, who've been doing things in a certain way. They're happy with that, and they don't want to change that. The best way to change that is to exemplar and show them the efficiencies that these processes have over their traditional approach. Now that might be you're catching weight, on our old style projects we had this many clashes, on these new ones we've got this many, look how much money that's saving. Or it might be speed, or any of those things, or just that looks better from an architect's point of view. So different roles and different things, but I think it is, what I'm trying to say is it's a very brave person that tries to change an entire organisation to new process at once, and I would be careful on if you are large in doing that.
Yeah, and I think looking outside of our industry, if you look at Microsoft and Amazon, these guys have got billions to spend on it. They will only undergo one big change at a time to an absolute maximum, because they understand it doesn't matter how much money you got, how much resource you got, you cannot implement that much change all at once. So yeah, absolutely, and we've probably got less money. Well, my organisation certainly got less money than Google, but we still understand that scalability. Don't try and do it all at once. Don't try and boil the ocean, as we call it. Make sure it's in stages, and make sure it's going all the way back to Jonathan's at the start. Make sure your goals are achievable. Make sure they're smart. Don't expect to change the whole organisation to BIM in 6 months. You will fail. But pilot projects, as you said, they're a great way to go. You almost create a little bit of envy in the organisation. If you have a successful BIM project, people will all of a sudden start looking over that. I'd like to be involved in something like that. That looks great. Why can't we have a project like that? And that creates a bit of a buzz in the organisation that creates a bit of change.
So another thing, so again, I guess I'm now talking about how does one help organisations change towards new process and so on. And the other thing is the bit almost nobody does, which is set up some KPIs. Now, KPIs cost you money because you have to have somebody going and doing that thing. So it's, what's the point of doing that? So years and years ago, when we were doing BS 1192, back in the day, we as the technologies group were asked to come up with proof that all of this was more efficient. And we all went away, and we all said, well, we've got plenty of people that can say it's more efficient, but we don't have any metrics. So I think there was one architect who'd actually bothered to do the metrics. So all the architects would say, well, it's definitely more efficient, and I use this. Where's the evidence? So again, if you are doing those pilot projects, agree with whoever it is that's high up and is going to then push this forward. What are the KPI? What are you wanting me to measure? And obviously, you then need to measure one of the old process projects as well, or several of them, to work out whether it is making sense for your business. It's not just about that, obviously, because there are huge benefits down the line to the client. It's not just about your business. But
yeah, certainly benchmarking before you do that. And both Jonathan and I are certified in virtual design and construction. And a big part of that is measuring what you do. Everybody's got a gut feeling that BIM and digital transformation is better, is more efficient. But gut feelings don't really sell it to the C-level. You've got to have some hard measures in there. Jonathan?
I just think as a final thought, one of the interesting things that I found with 3D modelling, I started off as a 2D draftsperson or a 2D technician. And I couldn't wait to start doing 3D modelling. And I think we've been bogged down with quite a lot of process and some all important things. But I think we've almost put in too much mundane into what's actually a very exciting time in engineering and construction. I think we need to start getting that buzz back and stop seeing BIM as almost a hindrance and actually see it as a real kind of exciting turning point here.
Good point, actually. Yeah, it is genuinely exciting. There's all of these technologies, and the fact that there's Autodesk and Trimble on the same stage is a watershed moment. Would have been shot for this 10 years ago. But there is an appreciation now that Trimble and Autodesk and Tekla and everybody need to work together to make these solutions work. Autodesk isn't the answer. Trimble isn't the answer. Not on their own. It's when we start to join this stuff up using the right software for the right job, when we get really successful. We can't be one thing or the other. It's not VHS versus Betamax, and that is showing my age. You know, it is both work together and complement each other, and I think we're only going to see more and more open source projects and data exchanges between all of the software houses going forward. Without it, I think we're looking at failure again. So, you know, exciting times. Good point, Jonathan. Any more questions that's provoked from the audience? All good? That's great. Well, thank you very much, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.